Good afternoon. Welcome to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. I'm an over 17-year criminal defense attorney, and I will be offering legal analysis where it presents itself. Again, this is Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion, and my name is Buffy. So today we're going to be talking about Ted Bundy, the myth we still cling to. There are names that don't fade, not because they deserve remembrance, but because we still don't fully understand why they were believed. Ted Bundy is one of those names, or Theodore Bundy. Even decades later, people still describe him the same way: smart, charming, articulate, and attractive. Maybe it was because he was a chameleon. Maybe it was because he knew how to read people and he knew how to tell them exactly what they wanted to hear. Because he was attractive, he was able to automatically generate trust from people. Generally, younger women who would see him in a cast or see him on crutches or were willing to put aside maybe their doubts or their fears and help him load something like a sailboat or some other thing, some other ruse that he would enact on them or perpetrate on them. And that's not accidental. The myth that followed, that allowed him to move freely, and the myth that still distracts us from the truth. This isn't a story about brilliance gone wrong. It's a story about how we mistake surface intelligence for character, and how badly that mistake can cost us. I think one of the saddest things, because I've watched several documentaries on Ted Bundy, I think one of the saddest things is when he goes to trial in Florida and he has terrorized the sorority house, I believe the Chi Omegas, harmed many of them, terrorized them all. And so he goes to trial in Florida and the judge says, you could have taken a different path. You could have been an attorney, and you would be in my local bar, and I would have loved to have you. But unfortunately, you chose the wrong path. And I think that sums up the fact that he could have went the other way. But for whatever reason, he chose not to go that way. And ultimately, I think that you have to be in that mind space to understand, which I don't fully understand. I can't say that I do. But it's difficult. Like, why do some people go the criminal route and others don't for whatever reason? Let's talk about how Ted Bundy appeared. Bundy presented himself as someone worth listening to. He studied law. He volunteered. He spoke in full sentences, not rage. He looked like the kind of man people expected to succeed. And that mattered, because we are conditioned to trust people who resemble competence. We assume intelligence equals restraint. We assume ambition equals morality. We assume articulate people are safer than chaotic ones. Bundy understood this instinctively because he was a narcissist, because he studied people, and he used it to his advantage. Further, it's my understanding, I believe, that he went to the Mormon church. I think he was around living around Salt Lake. And so, again, that's another indicia of reliability, right? Going to people's church and being like, hey, I'm one of you. The comfort of a believable story. What made Ted Bundy dangerous wasn't just deception. It was believability. It was his appearance that got him to have doors opened for him. It was the way he dressed, the way he carried himself. He knew what he had to do to convey trust. He didn't look like danger. He sounded like reason. When suspicions arose, people hesitated, not because evidence was absent, but because doubt felt rude. Questioning him meant questioning the story they wanted to believe. And so, warning signs were minimized, inconsistencies explained away, discomfort reframed as misunderstanding, accusations treated as exaggerations, Because it's easier to doubt victims than to revise our assumptions. Because once we trust someone, it's really difficult to believe someone that we don't know. And the victims were people that a lot of people probably didn't know. Not making excuses for them, just saying that when you have someone who is that charismatic, which he was clearly, and it was a false sense of security that he gave, a lot of people believed him. Control, not desire. There is a persistent cultural misunderstanding about violent offenders, that their actions are driven by uncontrollable desire. Absolutely not. This is a cop-out. Every single person has a choice. They can choose to do the right thing or they can choose to do the wrong thing. And if they are having issues deciding about whether or not to harm another person, and they can't decide what they need to do, they've already made that decision. They know what they're going to do. There are some people who are evil, unfortunately, walking amongst us who we may or may not know. Terrifying is what it is. In Bundy's case, the pattern suggests something else entirely. What mattered most wasn't intimacy, it was control. Control over bodies, control over fear, control over perception. He didn't just want compliance, he wanted dominance, humiliation, and erasure. Not because he lacked opportunity, but because power mattered more than connection. Because he had maladaptive behaviors. Because he was evil. No one does what Ted Bundy did, and unless they're evil. Absolutely not. I stand with the victims, people who had lives, people who were loved by others. They did not deserve to be treated that way. And that distinction is extremely important because it dismantles the myth that these crimes are about passion. They are not about passion. They are about control. Sexual assault is about control. The other behaviors that he did are about control and power and dehumanizing people and humiliating them and erasing them, using them for his own purposes. He felt entitled. He felt superior to his victims. And that showed. Why the system struggled to see him. Bundy didn't evade capture because he was a criminal mastermind. He evaded capture because he fit the system's idea of who deserved doubt. Oftentimes, the more attractive people, or who society deems to be attractive, they get a lot more leeway. Right? They let him escape. They let him represent himself in court. They let him jump from a building to escape, and he was gone for a period of time. Don't quote me on the exact time, but he was gone for a period of time. He evaded capture because he looked normal. He didn't have horns. He didn't have scars. He dressed nice. He played the game. He knew what people wanted to hear, what they wanted to have him say. He smiled a lot. He was smart. All that was a facade to disarm people and abuse them and humiliate them and hurt them. Law enforcement, media, and even the public struggled to reconcile the accusations with his image. And when institutions hesitate, predators gain time. When they gain time, especially when they're as prolific as Ted Bundy was, there are people who suffer. There are people who are murdered because he gained time. This isn't a failure of intelligence. It's a failure of imagination. The inability to accept that someone who appears normal could choose extreme harm. We don't like to think of our neighbors as bad people. We don't like to think that there is evil in our area or around us, or that someone is tricking us. In fact, he worked at the suicide hotline with Ayn Rand. Let's talk about the actual cost of charisma. Charisma is not a moral trait. It's a social lubricant. Bundy's charisma didn't make him exceptional. It made him unchecked. And the longer he was unchecked, the more people suffered. This is the lesson that still matters. Danger is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds confident. Sometimes it smiles at you. And that smile is a fake smile to disarm you. He was good at that. So closing, what this reveals about us. Ted Bundy forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We don't fear what looks familiar. We fear what looks chaotic. And in that gap between appearance and reality, harm often hides. This case isn't about warning about charm. It's a warning about our willingness to be persuaded by it, to be fooled by someone who knows how to play the game and how to play it well. Because the question isn't how he fooled everyone. You know what the real question is? Why were we so eager to be convinced? Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will be recording the rest of this series. So again, I appreciate your support. I appreciate you tuning in. It means a lot to me. If you have story ideas that you're interested in, please feel free to drop them in the community. As you know, I do respond to comments, and I'm willing to do videos that you all are interested in. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.